Central Texas. This is Phyllis Jones, and welcome to KISS Community Connections at My KISS 103.1. You know what? I give up on the weather. I'm giving up. I'm waiting on the rain today and tomorrow and to come so I can be all right. You know, this morning I want to talk about a couple of things, but one, I want to talk about perception, and you know how perception can change things just enough to I want to say give people the wrong point of view. So I'm explaining to you what happened last weekend to let you know what I'm talking about. Okay, first of all, we know that you all know that my show I'm heavily into fighting child sex trafficking. That's one of my number one things. I belong to a couple of organizations where we're actually, getting the word out, educating everybody and everything like that. Well, anyway, last Saturday in the newspaper, it was an article about a lady who lives in Temple. It's a lady in Temple. Her daughter was trafficked. She found where her daughter was, tracked her down, brought her back home. But her daughter had been brainwashed into the life, so her daughter ran away again and left. Well, mom tracked her down again, but this time the girl didn't come with her. The girl didn't leave with her. But a couple of weeks later, they found her daughter's body nude on a highway outside of Dallas. So in the article last week in the paper, it stated that the mother had formed a ministry with a church in Belton called Now I'm Free. And they were going to show a movie called Tricked. And the movie was supposed to be a documentary about sex trafficking. Well, if you all remember, a couple of weeks ago, I introduced a lady named Jessica. I interviewed her, and she wrote a movie about child sex trafficking. And her movie will be in Killeen. It's an 18 minutes movie, and my show is going to host a showing of it. So we were talking to her about it. So Jessica read the article too, and she called me and a couple of other friends and asked us, "Hey, listen, we need to go see this movie." So we were like, okay, all right, we really should go. We should go. And, the more information you get and the more information you can put out there, we can actually combat this. And the movie was held at the Beltonian Theater in Belton. So we had a hard time finding that, first of all. And it's a little bitty old-fashioned theater, really old-fashioned theater. So we got there. And the first thing we noticed was that out of 5, we were the only 5 people out of the whole theater that looked like us. The rest, everybody else didn't look like us. And we were like, wow, okay, we became kind of alarmed. What's going on here? Well, the first part of it's a pastor from a church in Belton where the mother has the Now I'm Free ministry is. He spoke first about, the dangers of sex trafficking, and, he did his spiel. And then one of the ladies from the sheriff department, she got up and she talked about it. And, so the information she gave, we're like, okay, that's pretty good. So we're going to look at a really good, movie. Well, the movie came on, and they talked to a lady who talked about, that she was a prostitute, used to be. And she talked about she went to the areas where she used to, work at. And she also said that, she got arrested a number of times, which we know they do. She got arrested a number of times, and, they would move her from city to city, because her name was so hot that, and she had all these aliases. So naturally she had to go city to city. That's not sex trafficking. That's a prostitute being moved around. Okay. So we were wondering, where is the trafficking part of this coming? So I was there, and I'll just say Barbara Garrett was there. Our city councilwoman Shirley Fleming was there. Jessica, one of her actors and actresses were also there. So we were sitting there trying to figure out when is the trafficking part of this movie going to start. Well, then you could tell the movie was spliced, was cut, because right after that we saw it went into another segment of this movie. And the movie was called Tricked. So we feel that we the ones got tricked. The movie tricked us. But we started seeing this other segment of this movie. And on that movie, you saw some black males, and they were pimps. And they were talking about their prostitutes. But, that's not what they call them. Anyway, they were talking about them and, how you treat them and stuff like that. And we were still going, this is not about sex trafficking. This is straight up about prostitution and pimps. So as this movie kept playing on, I started recognizing the movie. especially when I was leaning over to Barbara. I was sitting next to her. And I said, hey, this is a documentary. She said, no, this is a movie. No. I said, this segment right here is a documentary. I told her a couple of years ago, there was a documentary on HBO. It was called Pimps Up, Hoes Down. She goes, yeah, that's what this is. She says, yes, because I started telling her what was going to happen next. So next they showed the Players Ball. And if anybody remembers, back in the day, Ice-T started the Players Ball back when he was a player. And so, but they didn't show him in there. Well, they don't know who he was anyway, I assume. But they started showing, how all the pimps who were, all of them were black. I'll put it this way, 98% of the pimps in this entire movie were black. So, and if you listen to me, you know where I'm going with this. So they talked about how the women, how they treated them, how they got them, which still had nothing to do with sex trafficking. We're still talking about prostitution. So, in our head, we're like, what are they trying to say to people? Well, we knew what they were trying to say. So, yes, you saw the coats, the car, the flash. Now, I told you, 98% of the pimps were black. So the two pimps that were not black, they were white. They were little men, the small pimps. They didn't have the flashy cars. They didn't have all this. So they weren't the flash bang one. They were just, guys that were in the life. When they interviewed police officers and they were talking about, the girls on the street and everything like that, they were talking about all black once again. So I begin to, and if everybody knows me, I can get irate real quick, especially if something's going on like that, So I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, and Phyllis started praying because Phyllis's mouth didn't want to open. So I'm like, keep my mouth shut because I'm about to explode. The other part is we were sitting in the front. They put us in the front part of the row. Reason why we were sitting up front because we had a councilwoman with us, and then we had Jessica, who's a movie producer. So since we were all together, they put us in the front row. So there was no escape for me. My escape would have been walking out, but I'm like, no, if I get up in front and walk out, it's going to look kind of weird. So I'm sitting there, and like I said, I'm looking at this movie, but I'm remembering that it was on there on HBO special. So Jessica leans over in front. She said, Phyllis, you recognize this? Yep, I sure do. Well, Barbara and Shirley didn't recognize it because they didn't see the special. So we told them, go YouTube and you'll find it out later. But the movie was part. So the movie went back to the same girl who used to be a prostitute, the area that she was in her life as a prostitute. They talked to a Hispanic girl and, she talked about her life of being a prostitute and the fact that for her, she liked it because that was the only attention she's ever gotten. She came from an abused home with... she was saying they lived in a one-bedroom house with, it was 6 kids, mother and father. So she said there was a lot of abuse going on. So for her, that life was okay because her pimp cooked her dinner, got her hair done, nails done, but her pimp naturally was African-American. He was black. So, you like, okay, wow. And the more we looked at this, the more irate I was because I'm thinking these people here are getting an education on something that's not true. Not true, because sex trafficking and prostitution have nothing to do with each other. They're not even in the same umbrella. They're not even talked about the same. And they're totally different because prostitution, you willingly kind of enter in that one. And sometimes you're forced to, but prostitution, you can see them walking up and down the street. Sex trafficking, you don't see these girls or boys walking up and down the street. They're not allowed to do that. So it's two different things. And like I said, the movie was called Tricked. And I think we were the ones that got tricked and not everybody else. The weird thing about it is before the movie started, there was a guy sitting next to me and, he was like, introduce himself because his wife knows me from being on the child welfare board. So, she leaned over, Phyllis, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing all right. She said, I think we're going to learn a lot from this. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be really nice. So her husband, he went and got water and he got us all water, and he was offering us popcorn and, we didn't want no popcorn. We really came to see the movie. But after the movie was playing, his demeanor changed. We watched his demeanor go from, oh yeah, we're going to learn something. We need to all get together after this and see how we can move forward with this. And him and his wife, they were, oh yeah, we need to get together, see how far we can move forward. To talk about trafficking. But after them listening, watching the movie, their demeanor changed because before then, me and her were talking back and forth, and her husband were talking back and forth. When the movie started, we're still talking back and forth, but the minute they realized that every pimp on there was black, our conversation stopped. They didn't talk to me no more. And I could tell then their demeanor and mindset was beginning to change. I don't know whether they were confused like we were, or whether they go, wait a minute, hold up, this is really what it is. Don't know. But their demeanor changed from, we need to get together and talk about this, to nothing. I mean, nothing. We said nothing else. When the movie was over, they went to the left, we went to the right. Nothing. No, see you later. No, listen, nothing. Just nothing happened. And we were in line going to come and see the movie. Everybody was freely talking. Everybody was, freely talking. And, we were friends and no kumbaya moment, but we were all, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Where are you from? Why are you seeing the movie? So we were all in this camaraderie of hyped up to see what we could do to stop this. When we left out, nobody was talking. No one talked. Nobody said a word. When we stepped outside, the movie theater, we moved over. So we decided to be bold and brave. And there was an older white lady. She was, walking our direction. So we said, hey, what did you get out of this movie? She said, I'm confused. So we were confused, and we wanted to know, what was her confusion? Was hers like ours, or was it different? What her confusion was, she said that her granddaughter took off with her boyfriend. They still live in Belton, but they moved like to the other side of Belton. And she said, her granddaughter quit her job, told her that the house they're all living in, the lady wants $200 a month. And she was trying to figure out how was her granddaughter paying this. She said then she had read about sex trafficking, and she thought maybe that's what's going on with my granddaughter, And she said she had called her granddaughter still talks to her on the phone, but they don't talk about personal things. They talk about, the weather, when she was growing up, when she used to come to grandma's house, but not where are you, what are you doing? None of that came up. None of that came up. So her grandmother finally did find out. She said, I found out where she lives, and she went by there, and she knocked on the door, and, she said a lady came to the door. She said, I'm so-and-so's grandmother. Come see my granddaughter. So she was at that point, at that particular second, she was happy because she thought, I'm going to get to see my granddaughter. Maybe I can bring her back home. That was grandma's thought. But when her granddaughter came out of the house onto the porch, everybody came out the house. Everybody came out the house. All 8 people living there came out the house. And the lady whose house it was, she came out. So they're all out on the porch. So grandmother said, well, I want to talk to my granddaughter. And granddaughter told her, oh, this is my new family. And we do things all together. So the grandmother, she said she didn't have nothing to say at that point, because what do you say when you got, her granddaughter made 8, when you got 7 other people standing around that you don't know who they are, and you're supposed to have a conversation with your granddaughter. So she said the movie confused her because she started reading about sex trafficking, but this movie didn't explain nothing that she had saw, heard, or felt. So she was confused. She wanted to know what was going on. So she asked us. She said, so you think my granddaughter's being trafficked? And we say, most likely, yes. We said, well, they all came out to see what she was going to say, and see what you were going to do. We said, because she wasn't going nowhere, and they were going to make sure she didn't go nowhere, and you weren't going to get any pointed questions that you wanted. You weren't going to get any of those questions that you think you needed or thought you wanted. You're not going to get any of those answered. So, it was a waste of time, basically, for grandmother to go. But we told her to keep the line of communications open. And once again, she said she was confused about the movie. So we just bam, we just let her know. We said, the movie, I told her, the movie, most of that movie was a documentary called Pimps Up, Hoes Down, from HBO special years ago. I said the middle part of the movie, I said the first half and the last half, I said some of the middle with that girl, the white girl and the Hispanic girl, she said those were emerged into that movie. I said, because if you pay attention to the whole movie, it didn't make sense when they were showing splices of the HBO special and then splices of what was going. It didn't make sense. It was a total nightmare because it wasn't following a story. It was following something different, because how you going to see all these things going on? And she said, I didn't see any of that flashiness in front of that lady's house. Well, what she meant to flash was, when they showed the documentary, most of the pimps was in these limo, stretch limo. They had on these hats that they don't wear anymore. The whole entire, they had on all this crazy stuff that they don't even wear anymore. So she was confused, and she was like, what's a player's ball? And we're explaining to her what a player's ball is. And, she's looking at us like, so that has nothing to do with sex trafficking? No, it didn't. So for her, we realized she was confused. She was confused when she walked in and wanted some more answers, but she left there even more confused than she did when she got there, because nothing of what she read in the paper, just like we read in the paper, nothing was said. Nothing was it didn't match. It didn't match. And what I'm saying is be careful of perception, because right now, everybody who left that theater who didn't know anything about sex trafficking now thinks that, I'll say 92% of all the quote unquote traffickers, or what you want to call pimps, are black. They thinking that there's a player's ball somewhere, and that these men drive around in these cars and wearing all this jewelry. And they talked to some of the prostitutes, and they didn't call them prostitutes on the movie, they called them something else. But anyway, who said how happy they were, and they liked the life they were leading because, as they call daddy, and they daddy took care of me, daddy does this for me, does that for me, does this for me. We know that's what they call the pimp. But like I'm saying, it's the perception. So for me right now, and I'm letting you know, is we have to make sure about these perceptions. That's something we're going to have to defend for a little while now. That's also a setback, because if I'm teaching you something, and then you go see something totally to the left, I've got to work harder to bring you back on point to the truth. We all have to work harder to bring you back, because now this is what you're thinking. Now, my other part is the lady from the sheriff's department. She saw the movie before, because she was saying you all are going to really learn a lot. Okay, now my brain is a question. I need to call her and say, excuse me, you saw this, so you know it's wrong. Because working for Bell County Sheriff's Department, she works in the division for trafficking. She saw this documentary before we did, because she was telling us what we're going to learn. So she knows a lie, and she was okay with it because she's from the Sheriff's Department. So I had a question from her, and I'm like, I got to call this lady, and I was telling those I was with, they'll say, don't you call her tomorrow because we know you're a hothead. I'm like, you're right. Yeah, I know. I had to cool off some days. I really did. And I called her up, and I talked to her, and I asked her, I'm like, excuse me. She said, I said, can you define sex trafficking for me? And she asked me who I was, I told her who I was, how I had got into it and, know about it. But I asked her to define it for me. She said, well, since you know about it, you can define. I said, no, I need you to define it, because I was at the theater on Sunday. So I need you to define this for me. She says, well, the movie you saw was a documentary. I got that. I understand that. So I began to tell her what parts of that movie I know where it came from. So for a minute she didn't say anything, because I wasn't supposed to know that about this documentary on HBO. I wasn't supposed to know about that. How would I know about that? I shouldn't know. So I brought that up too. I'm like, I didn't see any HBO credits on there when it went off either, saying that, this came from, and I think that should have been. But when I began to let her know I know about that documentary, I know the name and where it came from, she went silent for a few minutes, because I got her. What I'm saying is, I let her know I know where you got this from. I know whoever created this, and you all looked at it beforehand. So I asked her, why would you show something that was a total lie, first of all, that wasn't about trafficking? Why would you show something like this to an audience of people who are going to now think there's a certain race of people, which are black, that do all this? I said, why would you do this? Because you're changing the perception of what the truth is. Because as we know, traffickers are all colors, all nationalities, and some of them are even women, which can be the same thing. But, they're all men. They're men and women. There's no ball for traffickers and all this other stuff. So I told her, I say, you mentioned one thing when you were talking, but you gave a different perception when the movie played. I said, so how did you get into this? And that's when she said, well, I was asked to speak. I'm like, but even though you were asked to speak, you previewed this movie because you talked about it. How did you let it go when you knew it wasn't true? Well, after that, our conversation got kind of short. She told me if I wanted to see her, I need to make an appointment and come down and talk to her. And I knew what that meant. That meant, you know what, get off this phone, because you're not supposed to have, because when I mentioned the documentary, she quiet. Like I said, she went quiet. She went totally quiet. Because she realized at that point, wait, but she didn't. She's seen the documentary. Yeah, I saw the documentary. So, let's be real. Well, she could not be real with me. So am I finished with the Bell County Sheriff Department? No, I'm not. Of course not. Because I'm determined to fight this. I am a fighter, and not for anything, but, something I think that's right. I'm a fighter. And like I said, perception hurts a lot of things. You know, that's how we've got into some of the situations we've gotten into because of a perception of somebody decided to sway your mind another way, you know, other than the way it was going. And then you got to fight twice as hard to make people understand, no, this is not the way it is. So, you know, that's something that we always got to be careful of. I was talking to a friend of mine and she was like, you all shouldn't have went. I'm like, no, I'm glad we did go, because now we know what we have to fight against. Now we know what we have to talk against. You know, so a lot of times people say, well, you shouldn't have went. To me, no, you need to go, because we need to know what everybody else is learning. We need to know what everybody else is seeing, because now when they see this, I can go back and say, hey, listen, that was a documentary. You need to go look at it. And I can send them there. I can go to YouTube, look at it, you know, and you can see it. I'll go back to Barbara and Shirley. They're going to kill me because I'm calling their names up, but they'll be all right. They went back on YouTube and looked at the documentary and go, oh, wait a minute, hold up. That wasn't the whole, right. They took parts of it and put it in there. And they took the part that they needed to put in there and they put in there, you know, so they understand now where we're going. The grandmother that we talked to, you know, I said they confused the heck out of her, because she's reading one thing, go see this movie thinking she's going to get some great new information to go get her granddaughter back. She's sitting there confused. You know, she was totally confused. And when we put her aside and talked to her, you know, for her, it was a relief that we talked to her. And you think we were talking to her trying to get a perception of what she got from the movie. She gave us a conversation that we weren't expecting. We were not expecting a dialogue with her about this. We thought she was going to say, this is what I think. You know, so I'm glad we stopped her, and she is too, because we expounded more from what she said. We gave her more information of where she can go and research more. You know, we also let her know most likely about her granddaughter, you know, that she's not going to see her one-on-one. You're not going to do that. Don't try this big rescue mission, because you're not going to live, because they don't, you know, she's not an important person. We let her know that, you know, and we even, and I'll say our congressman, we listened to John Carter, and he said that only the cute kids get trafficked, you know, and I emailed him. I emailed him, where in the heck and he said this last week, and where did you get this from? Where did you read this at? You know, because once again, now he puts it out there, only cute kids get trafficked. So now, you know, the kids or what kids who think I'm not cute, so I don't have to worry about it. No. And we tell everybody, no, it's not the cuteness, it's the body. They want the body. They don't care how the face look. It's the body that they want, you know. So these misconceptions are out there, and we need to know what they are so that we can begin to correct them, because we don't want people thinking one thing, and when something totally to the left happens and they go, how did it happen? Well, actually not how did it happen. It's been happening, you know. So like I said, when people do this perceptions, we need to be able to explain it so we can guide people back to the right direction. Because if people keep going and listening to the wrong information, then what's happening still happens. How it's going, still how it's going. You know, so like I said, people who left there thinking prostitution is sex trafficking, they're going to not look at sex trafficking as harsh anymore, because it's just prostitution. So to them. And they ain't got to worry about their neighborhood, because no black folks live in my neighborhood. So, you know, I ain't got to worry about it. You know, I don't have to worry about this. And the Hispanic girl, it happened too. Well, how she lived in a house, 1 bedroom, all these kids in the family. So she don't have to worry about it anymore. You know, so it's like, what the heck? You know, so right now in their neighborhood, it doesn't happen.